BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello everybody, today is Friday, another Cooper Friday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? And most of you will be listening to this episode as it's being uploaded on a Saturday. And I once again apologize for all of the inconsistencies with the Black Box Online Radio schedule. And starting on Wednesday, everything should be back to normal, because that will be the launch of the new channel membership, which is going to be including a DB Cooper segment called the Cooper Profile, which I'll be talking to you about throughout the duration of this episode. But you guys know the drill. You can hit the like button if you want, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment down below if you have something to say about DB Cooper, the man responsible for the only unsolved skyjacking in U.S. aviation history. For larger things, you can send them to me at blackboxonlineradio@aol.com. And I am your host, Blackbox Ned. On November 24th of 1971, a man using the name Dan Cooper boarded a plane going from Portland to Seattle. He handed a note to the stewardess stating that he had a bomb in his briefcase and that he wanted to take the plane hostage. He demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes. After successfully obtaining these in Seattle, he ordered the plane to fly to Reno, Nevada, and then jumped out through the back of the plane using the aft staircase, parachuting into the night, into the rain and cloud cover, never to be seen or heard from again. And I wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk to you guys about the new segment. Black Box Online Radio can now finally gain some stability, so I can do something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, and that is to divide the Cooper Friday segment into 2 different categories. I think that a lot of the interpretations of the physical evidence and things like suspect profiles and discussions should always be made free and available to the listeners of Black Box Online Radio. Of course, there might be some exceptions to that, but what I wanted to do with the Cooper profile was I wanted to create a different segment that could be discussing the psychological aspects of the case, but I was also reminded of geographic profiling, and those things will all be incorporated into a new DB Cooper show that will be coming out on Fridays. And the way that you can access this is by hitting the join button down below. You can join the channel membership. You will also get access to a second episode about Jack the Ripper if you follow that mystery, and the Tuesday episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the Morning, which is a general true crime discussion show, live stream, where you can put anything you want in the live chat and let's talk about it. And I think that if I'm going to be doing this segment on the Cooper profile and talking about different aspects of profiling in regards to DB Cooper, who was DB Cooper, how did he think, where was he from, how did he operate, one of the biggest starting points is going to be the book The Skyjacker by David G. Hubbard, which I have right here. And to be clear, this is not going to be the only resource used for the Cooper Friday segment, but David G. Hubbard does have 2 books out on the profiling of skyjackers. This is one, though, that I think is going to provide a lot of very interesting insights into the world of D.B. Cooper, as well as some of the D.B. Cooper copycats, and perhaps the predecessors such as Paul Sini. Let's have a read here, and yes, this is going to be done in the old-fashioned paperback way, so you might hear some things like fumbling around with pages and so on, but let's have a read. What motivates the skyjacker, this pirate of the airways? Idealism, escape from persecution, his own dramatic destruction. David G. Hubbard, a Dallas psychiatrist and the nation's outstanding authority on the skyjacker personality, has examined 20 of these highly publicized yet thoroughly misunderstood criminal offenders. The Skyjacker, His Flights of Fancy, presents his astonishing conclusions. Dr. Hubbard has found the invalid popular concept of the skyjacker as a strong, tough, left-wing idealist who is consciously and deliberately in flight from persecution. Now, I have to throw in some interjections right here. This is literally just the most introductory statement that the book could possibly provide. But in regards to this statement about being some type of left-wing idealist, Black Box Online Radio is not a political show. I'm not trying to share any specific political motivation, and I don't think that the Skyjackers would. And I know we had the Vietnam War era going on in the 1970s, but at the time of the D.B. Cooper skyjacking nonetheless. However, why on earth would anybody think that skyjackers should be primarily left-wing? Why on earth would they think that their skyjacker should have any strong motivation? When you look at somebody like D.B. Cooper, what is he doing? He is saying that he wants $200,000 and he wants parachutes to jump out of the plane. Did D.B. Cooper express any other statements? Well, I guess he did on the plane. He said that he had a grudge, not a grudge specifically with the airline, but just a grudge. So I think with these type of statements, it would be very, very hard for me to just look at multiple skyjackers even and just think that they have to be organized with any type of political affiliation. It seems like people are doing this for the money. In fact, D.B. Cooper is stating this, that he's doing this for the money. Now, some people think that D.B. Cooper was doing this for the thrill of it, and he's trying to create some form of excitement. And that's the stuff that I want to explore on the Cooper profile. How much of this is about money and how much of this is about some type of secret motive. But let's keep going with this introductory statement here. So, virtually all of those interviewed proved to be effeminate, sexually inadequate, ineffectually, generally apolitical individuals who have skyjacked in situations of total personal failure as a decisive act to get themselves killed, or at least out of this world. Well, now, let's look at here. Let's look at here, though. There's something that is very important. He said generally apolitical individuals. That means not left-wing or right-wing or associated with any type of political movement. Everything I just said, pretty much, because, well, what are they saying they're doing this for? They are doing it for money. There might be some thrill involved, but to commit a skyjacking like the D.B. Cooper heist, that is a very bizarre thing to do if you're doing it in a political way. You would think that D.B. Cooper would be trying to make a larger political presence. I think that the only ways that you could really tie this to a convincing suspect is perhaps if you're looking at someone who is trying to draw attention to certain holes in the FAA regulations, someone who is perhaps working for the Nixon administration like E. Howard Hunt, then maybe you would have something that would be worthy of exploration. But just to say that people are doing this for political reasons when they aren't stating that, well, that's going to be very assumptive to begin with. There are amazing similarities in their backgrounds. Most grew up in households where the fathers were extremely violent and chronic alcoholics. The mothers were typically religious zealots whose preoccupation with God stood in sharp contrast to the evil images of the fathers. The parents were separated by hostile emotional barriers, with each fighting for the allegiance of the children and granting political asylum to converts. There was a high frequency of violent, abusive older brothers and virginal younger sisters who strongly identified with their mothers. The offenders themselves tended to be sexually confused and weak mama's boys. The skyjackers share many similarities, highly important among them: dreams of paralysis that were resolved into flight dreams. Yeah, it does say that. I mean, I almost thought I read that word incorrectly. It says dreams of paralysis. Efforts to learn how to fly that met with failure and engrossment with jealousy of the astronauts. I think that this is going to be absolutely amazing. If that doesn't just make you excited, if that does not just set off your power grid, then I don't know what else will. I mean, firstly, even this thing about being some type of middle child with a stronger older brother and a very, very pure-hearted little sister. Yes, it perhaps is going somewhere to the point of the problematic middle children. I am a middle child. So was the serial killer H.H. Holmes, by the way, but I discussed this a lot when I did the episode on him. However, I'm a middle child, and all that stuff about problematic middle children is true. And you can think about it this way. It does make sense from just a purely superficial and logical standpoint. If you have 3 children in a household, or 5 children, or however many you would have, and you have one who's actually in the middle, you would have someone who is, the oldest is going to go on to develop more adult-like characteristics more quickly. The youngest is going to hold on to their childhood in a little bit more of a resentful way, and the middle child is just going to be stuck in perpetual adolescence, much like me. Absolutely like me. And I'm definitely one who falls into that category. And am I ashamed of that? 5% yes, 95% no. But this is real stuff, because when I had a little sister growing up, and we started talking about playing kids games, and we don't play those anymore. One thing she shared with me in adulthood was, well, I wanted to play little kids games. I wanted those things to continue. It was you guys, the 2 older siblings, who didn't want to play anymore, and I felt really bad about that. So you see how the childhood resentment allows the younger sibling to remain in that type of baby of the family syndrome. And I say that with the utmost respect, because I'm not putting anybody down. I just think that that's what's happening. Whereas the oldest is going to move on out of those characteristics because, firstly, they have younger siblings around them, and they are just going to kind of gravitate more toward the parents, and they also might take on the role of a protector, or they also just might take on more successful things because they're the first one, they're the trailblazer, they're the explorer, they're the ones who are doing this all based on their own initial experiences. And as like the middle child or the second child, or maybe even the fifth child, if you have 5 kids in the family, they're going to be following the older sibling as an example. And again, this stuff is very, very easy to arrange when you lay it out in logical sequences. So with somebody like D.B. Cooper, was he like a middle child? Makes a lot of sense. Was he somebody who was someone with an older brother and a younger sister, like the older, strong, commandeering, demanding older brother and a younger, pure-hearted sister? I wouldn't be shocked at all. And I really don't think we know enough about D.B. Cooper to make these types of determinations. I simply wanted to point out that everything that has been laid out here so far is something that I think is just very, very intriguing. Now, this concept of wanting paralysis, I mean, some people want to hurt themselves. I really am not sure how he's going to explore the concept of paralysis, like trying to paralyze your body. There are people out there who believe that they have some type of psychological, almost borderline disorder where they think that their bodies are meant to be crippled. I don't think he's going to explore that, but rather someone is thinking that they want to do what's called societal suicide, where even if they don't die, they will be removed from society. Let's say they skyjack a plane, they jump out, and they're severely injured, and then they're going to be paralyzed for the rest of their lives, and then they're just going to be on disability. And this is all coming back to feelings of inadequacy, which Dr. David G. Hubbard did list very clearly here. This is going to be something where somebody is going to be stating something to the effect of, well, I think that, I can't make it in the real world, so I'm just going to do something that's going to take me out of the conventional methods of society, the conventional frameworks of society. We see this very clearly with mass shooters. In fact, they're the ones that are most talked about frequently with the concept of societal suicide. They don't want to kill themselves. They want to commit the shooting so they go to jail for the rest of their life. The skyjacker doesn't want to kill himself, but if he gets injured in the skyjacking, then he is going to be paralyzed. So, let's keep going though with this here. The jealousy of the astronauts. Sure, the astronauts were receiving an enormous amount of praise in 1969. People like Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are celebrities to this day, in a good way. D.B. Cooper is a celebrity in a bad way, and the more that I get into the vortex, the more I find that the people who are following the D.B. Cooper case really do not like D.B. Cooper. They do not view him as a cool guy, even though they have things like CooperCon, and there's like a D.B. Cooper bar in New York City, I believe, but they still view him as somebody who was a criminal. He was a terrorist. He threatened people. He tried to get money, and if he didn't get it, he would kill people. He made statements like that. So they view him as someone who is definitely regarded as a bad person. Even if he is a folk icon, he is a bad folk icon. Now, this is another very interesting aspect that we're going to be exploring throughout the Cooper Profile segment, and that is the concept of D.B. Cooper being a mama's boy, being a weak mama's boy. Those are the words of Dr. David G. Hubbard, author of The Skyjacker. And I'm really quite curious to know what's going to happen, because as of now, I don't really see enough to show that D.B. Cooper is going to be a weak mama's boy, because I think that, firstly, family dynamics are very bizarre. We have daddy's little girl and the mama's boy, right? That there's some types of preferences for the children amongst the parents, but because this is a true crime channel, I talk up to you guys a lot about serial killers. I will tell you firsthand, some people grow up without being a mama's boy or daddy's little girl. Some people grow up disconnected from both their parents. I perhaps even could say that I grew up disconnected from both my parents. Now, I've never committed any major crimes like the stuff that I discuss on Black Box Online Radio, but I understand the concept of how you don't necessarily have this type of preferential bonding with one particular parent or some type of preferential treatment from one parent, and instead it just turns into the concept of you're just kind of separated from those types of emotional bonds. And that's perhaps one of the reasons why I talk to you guys about true crime on Black Box Online Radio. I just went in a different direction than somebody like D.B. Cooper. He went down and I went up. Sorry, terrible joke, but I can't resist those. I would like to keep going with the introduction here. On the basis of all the evidence he has gathered, Dr. Hubbard has formed some fascinating, provocative theories about what motivates the skyjacker. He relates the acute personal failure of the apolitical skyjacker to the situational failure of the political skyjacker. He probes into the little explored area of the effects of gravity on the individual, and he suggests ways to control the phenomenon of air piracy, of the utmost importance. In view of today's headlines, this book is going to be something that is going to be breaking toward an understanding of crime that is highly infectious and communicable at a deep psychological level to men of all nations, all levels of intelligence, and all political persuasions. And one more time, the Cooper profile is going to be starting with the book The Skyjacker by Dr. David G. Hubbard. Now, this is something that's very important to state. It is definitely possible for skyjackings to be done in a political way, and these are the ones that we more think about in regards to the ones committed by terrorists or groups of terrorists. Perhaps you could even call the 9/11 hijackers skyjackers. They were indeed, as well as all of those similar ones. They are doing that. But I think with the Cooper profile, I'm not going to talk so much about people who are like the 9/11 terrorists. I really want to know more about people like D.B. Cooper, who are going to be doing this as possibly and potentially lone wolves, which I think that D.B. Cooper most likely was, unless he had some type of help from an accomplice, which I don't rule out. But also this whole concept of what really would be going on with the backgrounds, because I think that this is some very, very, not like exactly unexplored territory, because Dr. David G. Hubbard wrote this book decades ago, but it's something that is not widely discussed in the Cooper circles, or at the very least, it is only discussed at a certain level. Only people who reach a certain level of depth into the vortex are going to be exploring these types of deep psychological mechanisms about what would inspire someone and trigger someone to commit a skyjacking with a bomb and state that they're doing this for profit. Are they all just going to be reasonably intelligent underperformers who have meek personalities? Or is there going to be something else there that we can find? And I invite you to join the show to follow along with the Cooper Profile segment. And yes, this is an introductory episode, but I'm going to be exploring this book, and there will be an episode coming out with the channel membership next Friday. And there's going to be a regularly scheduled Cooper Friday episode all the same, because there are a lot of D.B. Cooper suspects whom I haven't talked to you guys about that I just want to explore and evaluate. And once again, those things should always just be free and available to everyone. But lastly, as many of you know, I spend part of the year in West Virginia, part of the year in Boston, Massachusetts, and part of the year in the Philippines. And yesterday, I took my flight to the Philippines, although I went through South Korea first, and I had the layover, and then while I was at the airport in South Korea, I made a post that Cooper Friday will be coming out on a Saturday, and I received this response from Dave Smith, which says, "You jumping out with a bag full of kimchi?" Well, I mean, I really wish that I had, skyjacked the Korean Air flight going to Cebu, and then I would have just demanded $200,000 worth of kimchi, the expensive kind, and then would have just jumped out somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, because they would never find me. If they couldn't find D.B. Cooper in Oregon or Washington State, they wouldn't find me in the Pacific Ocean. But I don't actually have a real witty remark prepared. I just noticed that I saw this when I connected to, the Wi-Fi at the airport, and then that notification, then I went straight to a hotel. And at the hotel, they actually had this rule on the forms that you had to sign and agree to, and it was no kimchi allowed in the rooms. And I'm like, what an odd coincidence. But anyway, that's what I will leave you with for now, and feel free to check out some of the other content here on Black Box Online Radio. Once again, if you join the channel membership, you will get access to the Tuesday episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the morning. You'll get access to the double event, a second episode about Jack the Ripper, and the Cooper Profile, a second episode about D.B. Cooper. That's all for me now, and please tune in Monday through Friday for shorts and reels that will come out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. On Instagram and TikTok, I am BlackboxNed88, and that will be all. Until next time.